too.
Yes.
I mean, we're working more together, and that's really fun.
Oh, I love that. It's really exciting to finally have just kind of everybody at the table, right? And so we can kind of see what we're all doing and see how we can collaborate and help on
Yeah.
all of our different joint initiatives.
We had to put masks back on today. CDC recommendation, Calhoun County, but yeah,
Oh, was it? Oh, I missed that. Okay.
yeah.
That's
I think she actually came out last week, but we just got around to it today. But I remembered to bring my mask in, but then I forgot to put it on until I got down to my desk. It's, oh, I'm supposed to put my mask on. So
Yeah, I try to carry one in my pocket everywhere I go because you never know where you
yeah,
might feel more comfortable having one on or where it's required.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we're not quite out of the woods yet.
Not quite out of the woods, no. But we are live. How about that? We've already got
Ah!
4 viewers. How about that? This is Mac McCullough. This is Stories at Sundown, your favorite appointment on Monday nights in Battle Creek. And with me tonight, I have Emily Powell. Emily Powell is the, let me see if I can remember this, the Education and Outreach Manager for Kingman Museum.
That's it.
Yeah, where she's going to shed a little light on that. Emily Powell is sort of becoming a regular on this space, though. I mean, I've tapped into you for theaters for Kingman. I'm going to tap into you here in the next week or so too. So,
I'm
and
excited about the next peeks into the
it's
past.
their effervescent personality, but also seriously, your knack for making all things history and cultural kind of come alive, like the "why should I care" thing. So,
Yes.
thank you for coming on my program to tell everybody why they should care about this program, Emily.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I've been a fan since you've started this Stories at Sundown. It allows me to see who's doing what in town and get to know different organizations. So I'm privileged to be on with you as well as a fan.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, there's a lot going on in Kingman. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But as the watchers of the show know, I like to get the inside story of the people that I have on. And so my first question really is, how does a nice farm girl, horse rider from Delton get into this field of archaeology?
Oh, good question, right? I became an archaeologist for many reasons. One, like you mentioned, I grew up on a 200-year-old farmstead in Delton, Michigan, and surrounded by lots of old stuff. You can't climb trees or crawl into wells without coming across stuff from the past. And so always kind of elicited a fascination for a lot of the material culture that people used on our own farm. But also, I had an older father. He was 50 when I was born. And so
It's not
having
that old. Oh.
it's not old. It's not old. But I grew up with all of his stories from the 30s and 40s and surrounded by the news. We only had the news on when I was a kid. So surrounded by news programs and newspapers and magazines and books. And
I think I would have liked them.
yeah. So constantly surrounded by stories. And especially like older magazines. I was reading like AARP and Reminisce magazines. And so from his stories and from all of those, all the things we were seeing on the farm, I just naturally grew up with an appreciation for people and for history, really. And how do you get to touch history? By becoming an archaeologist, really. So I'm like, I want to do this for a living.
Yeah. And so, you are an trained archaeologist, and what else? Anthropologist?
Yes, all at least in the United States, all archaeologists are anthropologists. So you get a degree in an anthropology department, focusing specifically on archaeology in some aspect. I'm considered an historical archaeologist, so I focus on more material culture, the things that people make and use in the more recent past. So that's typically coupled with historical documents. So we're trained to look at the archives and books and articles and primary resources as well. So yeah, I did that for several years, like 15 years. Graduated from Western Michigan University, and worked both through Western Michigan University and as a contract archaeologist for several years before coming here.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, that was one of the programs we had you on. Your ties back to Western. We had some archaeologists on when we did the program on the Shepherd House on Riverside Drive, Hans Stark's house. That was
Yes,
really cool.
those were Western Michigan archaeologists. So it was great to connect with some of my colleagues on that program as well.
Yeah, no, I don't know how well people understand the whole field of archaeology. Obviously, we all have heard of Indiana Jones, but you used a term recently, and I thought it was really poignant and appropriate for what we're talking about here with Kingman, and that's public archaeology. What exactly is that?
Yes, public archaeology.
And
So
talk a little bit about how you got into this field. I mean, it's a fascinating backstory too, St. Joe River, all that stuff. But public
yes,
archaeology.
well, thinking about archaeology as a field in the past, science would typically include asking your research questions, gathering your data, and then publishing it. And people would find out about different archaeology sites and artifacts through these peer-reviewed journals and articles and at conferences. So unless you were really in the know or really wanted to learn about these things, would you know particularly what's happening in your area, perhaps? But in the last probably 20, 30 years or so, there's been a shift in archaeology where we're understanding that there's more of a public want and need for what's happening in our backyards. So we're
Yeah.
understanding now that the public, the communities, our neighborhoods want to know what's getting dug up in their backyards. And so we were kind of at the forefront of that at Western Michigan University when we were asked by a local community group in Niles, Michigan called Support the Fort. They're like, hey, we've got this like 18th century French colonial thing going on. Can you come help us find it? And so we did. And because the community had asked us to come in and do this work, we were then tied to these people that had a vested interest in what we discovered. And so that turned into relaying to them what we were finding, what we were doing. But because it was right on the St. Joseph River on city property, we would have random people just come up, and I was a student in this project in 2002. This ended up being the Fort St. Joseph archaeological project. But we would have people just show up and be like, hey, what are you guys doing over here? What are you digging? What are you finding? And we started realizing more and more people were asking us, and so we set up tours. And that got bigger and bigger. We had more people come, and so we're like, we needed to turn this into a thing. And so we were blessed to have other students that were historians, reenactors, and we just all got together and created an archaeology open house, which still 20 years later continues to this day. You can visit Niles, Michigan in the summer, and that includes watching archaeology students digging up this 18th century French colonial presence. It includes outdoor panels and museum exhibits. We've got all the reenactors reliving what was occurring at this site in the 18th century. Pretty cool. And there's kids activities, but we didn't know what we were doing when we were doing this in 2002. We were kind of making it up as we went. So we are knocking on doors and hanging up posters and showing up at farmers markets and like, hey, come look at our fort. And so through this, we learned how to talk to people about history, about science, and where we needed to be, what worked and what didn't. How do you invite 2,000 people into your archaeology zone, and how to make that safe, and how to make it relevant and fun? And so through that, and I was with them for 10 years as both an undergraduate and a graduate student. That's now known as public archaeology. How do you take your research, your science, and share it expand your communicating to the public, whether that's school children, whether that's the neighbors next door, or these support the fort groups. And
Yeah.
so it was through that education, my own, how to talk to news people like yourself, how to give interviews, how to go on TV. We all were just kind of learning it as we went. And so that really shaped kind of how comfortable I am doing this now at Kingman Museum, being a science communicator, if you will.
Yeah.
So even though that's more history, Kingman Museum is natural history. It still ties into how to engage with the public through these scientific concepts. So it's been a ton of fun. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, we got a taste of that when we did the program on the Shepherd House. I mean, that had hundred. I think last I looked, it was well over 500 views on that video. And the one of the things that I remember is how you and some of your colleagues were able to explain what the dig that you did there, the research that you did there, really um, showed some insight into not only the people who lived there, but the class of people that they associated with, what they did. It was really fascinating. Yeah, and so maybe I'm answering this question already, but why is it so important to bring the public into the science?
That is the question. Why, who cares? So what? Why is this relevant? And I interlace that into all of my lesson plans, whether it's for kindergartners or seniors. Got to answer that, like, who cares question, right? And so again, with history or with science, why should we care about the world around us, especially today, talking about science communication? Why is environmental education so important? Why should we understand what we can find and discover in our backyards? How do we as humans connect with our natural environment? That's all important. In terms of both how we utilize our resources, but how to solve problems in our society today. That all comes from, scientific thought and engineering. And so if we can just a little at Kingman Museum spark some of that curiosity and allow for a little bit of that self-discovery through these items, hopefully we can gain more appreciation for our natural environment,
Yeah,
and that includes humans too. And so respecting and showcasing the amazing diversity that we have both in the human experience as well as the natural world. And so that's what we're here to do. It's a big task, but I'm
mhm.
here for it.
Well, it's been a tough time for Kingman. You lost your building, what, a year ago? Was
Yeah,
that yeah, about a
yeah.
year ago. I mean, you're not alone in this. I mean, everybody's struggling for relevancy these days, right? And how do you reach people? And we know you're relevant. So what's the magic, potion, so to speak, get people involved? Why don't we just go ahead and jump into Kingman a little bit, and we can talk a little bit about what's going on there, and then depending on how much time, we can have these bigger, broader conversations too. All right. Let's put up that. There we go.
There we are. Yay! If there's our building. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, it was certainly a challenge these last couple years, as it has been for everybody. For Kingman Museum, especially during lockdown, we weren't able to do much. Couldn't have any visitors. Couldn't do like all of our field trips, education programs, everything shut down. And so we lost all of our revenue. Our staff was laid off. And so we were riding the struggle bus for quite some time there. And I do think it speaks to our tenacity and our resilience. We're still here, but we did what we could through the pandemic. We literally dragged collections out on the sidewalk. I was selling astronaut ice cream out of my car. We were doing what we could, right?
Yeah.
And certainly a lot of virtual programs, which was so much fun. I am still cleaning slime off of my laptop from some of our after school programs. But we did have to move out eventually out of the building. And I can speak to that. This was a conversation we were having before the pandemic. In an 80-year-old building, we were starting to see some real challenges. And we had, some sustainable income to manage some of that. So recently we were able to replace our roof, for example. But when you lose a lot of your funding, we could no longer really maintain some of the upkeep that was required, again, on this 80-year-old building. And so we were starting to really see some structural issues. So, for example, when it rained, the building would flood in places. And when you have
good for
when you have a collection that just turned 150 years old, which we did last year during the pandemic, we started to really, really worry. We don't own the building. While we don't own the building, we do own the collection, and we take very seriously that we are stewards of this collection, of this legacy. And so we realized we don't have the time. The collection didn't have the time for a capital campaign during a pandemic where we lost 70% of our income. And so we had to make that decision to move everything out. And then at least the collection is safe. It's an offsite storage. We're in a safe location. And so now we have the time to develop a relocation strategy, whether that's working with the city, working with the current building to get into a place of a 21st century museum space, or find a new building. Is there something that could better suit our needs? So that's where we're at right now. So that kind of in between period of, where do we go next? And so we're really excited to find a space that we can work out of. We are still busy. We're still doing lots of things, but we're open. We just don't have a physical location that you can visit. And so,
right. Let's talk about some of that stuff. Shall I advance the slide?
Yes. That last slide, by the way, I should mention, was the header, to our newsletter. So we do put out a newsletter twice a month with all kinds of resources and updates and things that we're up to, events and programs. So if you're interested in getting that newsletter, you can text Kingman to 22828 to receive that. We just put one out today. So that's a great way of keeping up with us. We're also on social media, as you see here. This is a picture of our American lion, and you can see he's got his heart. This was a post that we put out for Valentine's Day, so we get pretty cheeky with our collections. We have fun on both Facebook and Instagram. We're also on LinkedIn. So you can connect with us that way as well. So we keep that pretty regularly updated. And we're still doing after school and summer programs. We're doing education programs. We're loaning out the collection. That's something new for us. Usually we would showcase our own exhibits, but now we're reaching out to community partners and saying, hey, do you have a space? We can give you artifacts to put on loan. So we've got artifacts right now at Albion College. This week, we will be delivering materials to East End Gallery in Marshall. We had a wonderful exhibit partnership with the Art Center of Battle Creek. So we're looking for, anyone who's willing to partner with us, and we've 20,000 artifacts. So we would, love to share them. So we want to make sure that this collection is, accessible. We still want people to be able to see and experience these things. This is a great picture of Josh Holderbaum. He is our operation manager extraordinaire. We recently, a couple weeks ago, showcased at the Kalamazoo Rock and Gem Show. You can see a nice array of our lava materials, different igneous rocks from Hawaii that we have had in our collection since 1919. So again, many of our collection is rare and unique. And we certainly want to still maintain this collection in Battle Creek if we can. So we're out showing it off anywhere we can.
There's your team.
Here's the team. That's us. That's it. 1, 2, 3. So you'll see this Altina de Jong. She is our amazing executive director at Kingman. She comes with a wealth of experience, both in museums and education programs. She's an amazing graphic designer, so she's been a huge addition to us these last few years. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Josh Holderbaum. He's the one who has the best memory of anybody I know. He knows every piece in our collection and where to find it. And then me, little me, I'm the education and outreach manager. So I typically will handle all things, education programs and like this kind of stuff. I like talking to people. So I'm out setting things up. So and delivering all the science knowledge that I got.
And there's some more of your team right now.
Yes, we were blessed, I have to say, when we moved out of our building, it was the Battle Creek Community Foundation who gave us the opportunity to be able to do so. They saw the desire and the need to keep this collection in Battle Creek, and so they helped us with the move. As well as showcasing some of our objects in the newly restored Milton downtown. And you can see we're in the Milton here in this picture with the staff and a couple of our board members. Michelle Reed in the center as our board chair, and then Susan Johnson off to the side, previous board chair. So they've been instrumental in helping in making these very, difficult decisions and choices, and then keeping us moving forward. So we've been lucky to have them working with us as well.
Yeah, and people can go to the Milton and see this?
So that was, and you can see us setting up in this picture. This was over the holidays, this last December. And so that was just up for the holidays. But so this one is down now, but we're creating a new one in this Milton space that will be up in July. And then that will be on display for 12 months. We're pretty excited about that one. So anyone who comes into this beautiful area we'll be able to see some of our collection as well. So we've been blessed with this partnership as well.
Yeah, it is really gorgeous.
So we're keeping busy.
Yeah. So what's in the immediate future for Kingman? What sort of things are on your calendar?
This summer, we are gearing up for like summer camp season. So we are facilitating 2 summer camps with Kellogg Community College. I'll be teaching my Grossology series, which is one of my favorites. So we'll be talking about the science of all things like disgusting. So we're going to be eating insects. We're going to be making slime. We're going to be talking about animal scats. We're going to be, you name it. So that's a fun one with their youth programs. We're also doing a Train to be an Astronaut summer camp through KCC. Kingman Museum has always had an amazing liaison with NASA, our National Space Agency. And so I regularly attend webinars and workshops at pre-pandemic. We would go to NASA and they would share exhibits with us. So they're always keeping me in the know with programming and resources. So it's been a lot of fun learning space science and using that in our planetarium, but also doing these off-site programs like Train to be an Astronaut. So that's going to be a lot of fun this summer as well. And I mentioned that we have a partnership with East End Gallery in Marshall. That's a fun one. That's a new partnership for us. They're doing a summer camp. It's a prehistoric, so they're kind of doing a Jurassic Park themed summer camp and using many of our pieces to have on exhibit to complement that. So we're really excited about that. You can actually go and see these artifacts at the gallery for the month of June. And so golly, what else do we got? Oh, June 18 is Kingman Museum night at the Battle Jacks, at the Battle Creek Battle Jacks. That's our baseball team. So you can actually buy tickets for June 18th. That's a Father's Day weekend. And part of the proceeds of the tickets go towards Kingman Museum. So this is a great fundraising opportunity. It's been a lot of fun connecting with those guys. And so if you go to battlecreektickets.com, put in Kingman as the promo code, and you can buy a $12 ticket. You get entrance, you get a hat, and then part of the proceeds helps out your local natural history museum. Yay! And then we'll root on the Battle Jacks as they battle it out with the Kalamazoo Growlers. So it'll be a fun night. So we've got that coming up. And then the exhibit at the Milton in July. So yeah, 1 month at a time, Mac.
So, yeah, I mean, you all are working really, really hard at being visible, at being accessible. You're doing everything you can short of having a brand new building.
Yeah, not bad from like working from home. This is working from home. But it's honestly been a challenge, but it's been an amazing opportunity to do things we haven't had time to do before, like make new connections with other partners, other organizations, being able to loan out our collection. We haven't really had time to develop what that looks like. Cleaning up all of our stuff when we had to move out of the building. We were there for 80 years, 4 stories. Most people don't know that there's a sub basement, 20,000 artifacts. We collected a lot of stuff over the years. And so we had the opportunity to really clean house. It was like an episode of Hoarders, where we're like, okay, we're going to be the professional organizers. In this room is the recycle stuff. In this room is the garbage. In this room, we're donating, so we were trying to organize everything. We've never had that time before. So again, a wonderful opportunity to be able to really clean up our stuff and really assess what we wanted to hang on to. Of course, we're keeping the collection, but it's a lot of other stuff, our education materials, that kind of stuff allowed me the time to really kind of delve through some of that material. So we're just trying to stay positive, stay hopeful, and be able to grow into the future. If we want to be sustainable for the next 150 years, what does that look like in the community? And what does Battle Creek want for us? We're open and we're listening.
Yeah. And, you're talking a little bit, I'm just putting up the link to our YouTube channel where we have a great history of Kingman Museum that you helped us produce, and Eltina as well, and Josh. And so if anybody hasn't seen that, you might want to go check that out. It's really an amazing story, which, tees up the question I have for you really. And that is, I mean, you obviously love it there, but it wasn't necessarily where you saw your path going. So I want to know why, and what you've found there, what you've discovered in Willard that really fulfills you. Not Willard, excuse me.
Kingman. I know what you meant. I never saw myself at a natural history museum. I mean, as a trained archaeologist, and with the degrees in anthropology and ethnohistory, I never thought about space. Never thought about, a lot of these other sciences, chemistry. So I've had to expand my professional development in some of the other realms. But it's been so much fun and it's fascinating. But coming from a place as a historian, as an archaeologist, it's been different. But like I mentioned, it's science. It doesn't matter what science, we approach it relatively the same. And so it's been fairly easy to move into this role. But certainly happenstance, because I was in graduate school at Western Michigan University. My father incidentally got sick. He had throat cancer. And so I dropped out of school. I moved home. I was his primary caregiver. And so through the next year or two, through that experience, things shifted for me, right? And so I realized he did pass away. And so what can I do to kind of give back and honor his role in my life, and that really went to service to my country, to my community. And it was something he always wanted me to do, really, that he hinted at. And so I dropped everything and became an AmeriCorps member. I served as an AmeriCorps member for 2 years with the American Red Cross, and that really changed the trajectory of my life. And so I met an amazing group of people in the Kalamazoo and Battle Creek offices of the American Red Cross. After those 2 years, I still volunteer full time as a Red Cross disaster volunteer. So many people will see me in the community in that role as well, as a community volunteer lead, doing everything from preparedness education and working as a caseworker for those who have lost everything in a home fire. And so because that also allowed me to connect with the community on different levels, I was able to meet so many different people, hear lots of stories, and really get to know Battle Creek more intimately. And it was through that service that I met up with people at Kingman Museum, because they were hosting Spooky Science Saturday. And I was hosting a table as a Red Cross volunteer. I was one of the science tables. And when my service was over with the Red Cross, they knew, and Kelly, who was the director of Kingman at the time, called me, and she's like, "Hey, you looking for a job?" So I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah!" And I really wanted to stay in Battle Creek, so it allowed me that opportunity to continue service here in a different capacity. So blending both, community outreach and museum collection at the same time. So it was kind of a dream come true to be able to come to Kingman. So yeah, still here. That was 6 years ago.
Well,
Seven,
I
seven,
do want to. I love it when we get questions from viewers, and we got one, so I want to make sure we get it answered.
yes.
Lava. And no, Karen, it's not a dumb question. How do you get new
There's
lava?
no such thing, Karen.
Are you still adding to the collection? That may be a broader question.
Yes and no. Like formally, not really. We kind of stopped formally taking objects up into probably the 80s, 90s. We became an independent nonprofit around the year 2000. Before that, belonging to the Battle Creek public school system. So a lot of it was due to space. We didn't have a lot of space
Right.
to really bring stuff in.
I can't imagine. I can't believe you had all that stuff in there. I mean, that's not a big building.
No.
So
We had a lot of secret side rooms, a lot of people didn't know about, like hidden back doors, and there was a lot of like underground space you didn't see. But yes, we didn't have a lot. But we will take in some items on occasion, depending on what it is, depending on our collection policy. All museums have a collection policy. Does it fit our mission? Does it fit our education policy? And do we have space to maintain this forever? Because once you accession an object, you're essentially in charge of it forever. So do we have the resources and the capacity to take on more? And for the most part, we didn't. So, but a lot of our collection came from our first two directors, the Brighams, senior, junior, through all the way up into the 70s on the expeditions they went on. They're traveling all over the world. And so much of our collection stems from those travels. So, once in a while we'll say, yay, we'll take something, but it really kind of depends. And we have to kind of sit down and have that conversation.
yeah, yeah. People are so attached, even attached to the museum because it's so wrapped up in our story. I mean, what high school has a natural history museum? And we've had a collection now for, as you say, 150 years. I think one of the interesting thing, though, I mean, we talked about this the other day, this paradox, these breathtaking advances in science that are all around us. If you just kind of step back and think of them, it's really amazing. But also, it feels like a deepening distrust of science. And how do you bridge that? How do you address that?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, by understanding where people are coming from, like really listening. And, when people ask questions or throw out ideas and agendas, it's important to listen. And, it's not going to help anybody to shut down an idea, right? And so, especially as a science communicator, if somebody comes to me and, for example, if it's, the earth is not round, that's a common one, right? And so, um, I can't just say, no, you're wrong, because then that hurts. You get defensive. That's mean, And so I've learned, and NASA has been wonderful at this, and other science communicators. I've lots of mentors, how to really sit and listen and say, yes, I can understand where you would think that makes sense. You look, and that's what it looks like. And let's talk this out. Let's talk about it. But try to introduce what current scientific thought is saying. And these things can't be done like on quick, social media comments. They can't, it requires, relationships and real engaging. And so that's why I think important to have institutions like Kingman Museum where we can be a solid resource for, constant, interaction. And we would love to still stay in Battle Creek as that resource. Those are my favorite conversations, to be honest. I mean, they sound challenging, but I just love where people are coming from, regardless of background and perspective. And again, a lot of times, changing hearts and minds comes from just active listening, right?
Right. Right.
So,
Well,
yeah.
when we talked last week, and then when we talked earlier this evening about public archaeology, I don't know if there's similar applications of science, towards science and other fields and all, but that really seems to like get at the heart of it. Is making them part of this, making people feel like they're part of the story because they are.
Absolutely. And it's not just archaeology. There's lots of, all the sciences are doing fabulous work in trying to tell a better story, working on their advocacy, whether it's the American Chemical Society or the Astronomical Associations, or they're all doing an amazing job at sending me resources so then I can be the liaison and share them with our community. It really, comes down to access to resources, funding our educators, our education programs, and really understanding the importance of education in our neighborhoods, and whatever that looks like, whether it's lifelong learning, from our kiddos to our seniors, or allowing access to life-wide learning. It's not just what's in the schools, but what's happening after school, what's happening on the weekends, and we make those choices, and we can make that a priority. And so one of the reasons I love Battle Creek and I stay in Battle Creek is to be a part of that. So as a supplemental education facility. So yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. You're going to be on next week.
Yes.
So cool.
You can't get rid of me, Mac.
That's right. Next Wednesday, no, we're going to take a little stroll through Oak Hill Cemetery with a few other folks and talk about some of the stories there. So really looking forward to that.
I'm super excited. I did my master's thesis on historic cemeteries and headstones as material culture, a reflection of the behaviors in our society. I'm super excited. I think I forced myself to be on that show. Didn't I call you and say, you don't have a choice? I have to do that one.
That's right. We all had to like hold the days for you and make work on your calendar. No,
Yeah.
it'll be a lot of fun, and, it's just a lot of fun working with you to help elevate these stories that really kind of, make us who we are, and talk a little bit about how we got to be here, but by the way, I'm holding you personally responsible. I want the planetarium back, okay?
Me too. Me too. I should say, as an older version of when we had a state-of-the-art Digistar planetarium, it's like having a Windows computer from 2002. It needed some updating. So it was another opportunity to say, okay, this one's not working anymore. What can we do for future technology? So I miss it too. Never thought I would be giving star talks as an archaeologist,
No,
but
no.
we really grew into it. We loved our planetarium.
So I'm gonna put up, in case anybody didn't get it, if you wanna get that newsletter, I'm getting it. Um, Emily made sure I got it. But, text Kingman to 22828, and you'll be on the list to get that newsletter, and you can follow their activities right there on Facebook, Kingman facebook.com/Kingman Museum, so
And I should say very quickly, please reach out to us if you have ideas, if you have donations, sponsorships. We have lots of initiatives that need sponsorships. We've got our spring appeal happening right now, and so we're trying to raise $50,000 just to make it to the end of the year, so we can continue in these programs. So that's kind of our big push right now. And or some of our partners, we've got museum-ish. We didn't really talk about that, but we've got an amazing partnership with the Historical Society and the Regional History Museum in Battle Creek. So we're really reaching out to everyone to see, like, how can we help each other? So I can be found at epowell@kingmanmuseum.org. We're open and we're listening. So
all right. And
please
more to
join
come.
us.
More to come on Museum-ish. I'm a part of that too. We're just figuring out how we can all work together because we have so much cool stuff. We want to make sure that people see it and experience it, and we can grow it. So
We're living on a gold mine, Mac.
that's
There's
right.
so many cool things in Battle Creek and Calhoun County, and we just want to make sure that there's a standard repository for these items, for the material culture, for the archives, for the people and their stories, and that there's a place that we can access all these things. So how can we all sit together at the same table and make our dreams come true? So that's what we're doing.
We'll get it done by the end of the year, right?
Yeah, you and I.
Now,
We got this.
concentrate. Hey, thank you so much for coming. And again, everybody, join us next week, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you for having us on. Thank you.